going to take a look at how to write an expository paragraph. And the first thing we need to do before we even write an expository paragraph is we have to read our question. So our question is, how does the author show what it's like to live through the Peshtigo fire? You can notice I wrote the question right below our rubric that we're using to score this. And one of the ways, we're going to be referring to this rubric, one of the ways to get a 4, which is an A, is to address all aspects of the prompt. So in other words, my topic sentence needs to talk about what my question is. So I'm going to go to the rubric. I'm going to write, there are several ways. Well, actually, this is my organizer. Alright, so I'm going to write there are several ways the author shows what it was like to live through the Peshtigo fire. Notice all I did for that topic sentence was change my question into a statement. So it's pretty easy to get a 4 on that because you're just turning your question right here into a statement. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm looking in the article to try to show or prove my point of how the author shows what it's like to live through the Peshtigo fire. Now at the top here, the top of our circles, we're coming up with categories. The categories comes from my head, so I don't have to get these from the article. These are right from me. So I decided to break this into 3 sections. So I decided to break it into characteristics, so in other words, characteristics of the fire, survival, how people survive, and damage. Now, of course, when I write these, I need to turn those into complete sentences. I can't just put characteristics in a paragraph because that wouldn't be a sentence. So I'll do that later when I decide to write a paragraph. Right now, that's fine. I'm just taking quick notes. All right, so my next job for my boxes here is I need to go back in the article and find some examples from the article. So first example I'm going to try to find is what the fire was like, some characteristics. So we have our Blood Red Night article, it's the one we read in class, and let's see if I can find something that tells me what the fire was like. I'm actually going to skip to this page right here. If you need a copy of this article, definitely ask me. I can give you one in class, so you can reread it and kind of remind yourself what it's like. All right, so here we go. October 8th. Naturally hot. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that because that doesn't tell me anything about the fire. Let's see. I do want this though. The sky glowed orange from many small fires smoldering in the forest. And we talked about John's parents a little bit. I'm not really interested in that. Just kind of skimming through. I don't go all the way down here. As the day wore on, the smoke thickened and the sky turned blood red, which is kind of cool because it relates to the title. Let's go up top a little bit and see if there's some more information about it. Okay, we have swirling gusts of wind that whipped up the small fires into the forest. The fires grew bigger and bigger. Finally, they joined together into a monstrous inferno. Flame towered hundreds of feet in the sky. Trees exploded in extreme hot. Flaming hunks of wood flew across, setting more fires along the road. I have a bunch of information here. But what I need to do, unless I want to put this in quotes, which would be a lot to quote, what I need to do is paraphrase this. So I'm just going to jot down some quick notes. I'm going to put sky, orange, to right, or let's go with blood red. I like those words. We're going to talk about the sound. Sounded like a train. There's a couple details there. I'm going to talk a little bit in this box about how fire started. So it started with small fires. And I'm going to put hot enough to explode trees. Alright, so now I'm ready for my next category, survival. So I'm doing the same thing, going back to my article, looking for examples of how people survived this fire. That takes me right down to John's parents. Okay, so right down here, they left one possession, mattress stuffed with feathers toward a plowed field. So some people went towards plowed fields. I go to the next page, see if I can find something else. And I get down to this area here where it says, they shoved their mattresses into water, soaking them, climbed into a well, pulled the mattress on top of themselves. Okay, that should do it for survival. So I can get real short with my notes here. Just put people went to plowed fields. The parents of, let's go put John Kramer. He's the main character in our story, and his wife hid in the well. Alright, so now I'm ready for damage. So I'm going to look and see what kind of damage this fire caused. Takes me right back to the article. And if we take a look down at the bottom here, it's going to talk about, right here it talks about it leveled Peshtago, 16 other towns to the north. By morning, more than 1 billion trees were gone in an area twice the size of Rhode Island. There's nothing more than a sea of charred trees and ash. Then we talk about even the deaths. Really likely between 1,000 and 2,500 people died. So now we can go back. Organizer, and we can put destroyed 16 towns, killed 1,600 to 2,500 people. Last thing I need to do is come up with a closing sentence. A closing sentence just restates our topic sentence, which is the first sentence. So I'm just thinking of a different way to say that. I want to use some synonyms to kind of make it sound different, but I don't want to get too different because I still want to focus on the problem. So I'm going to put the passage uses several details to depict, nice vocabulary there, we're looking for big words, the Peshtago fire as a traumatic event or experience. Okay, so now we're ready to write our paper. Now that we have our graphic organizer filled out, we can turn our graphic organizer into a paper. So as we do this, I'm going to talk about a few commonly missed areas on our penguin paragraph. One of the most commonly missed areas on our penguin paragraph, we've talked about this already, but you have to make certain that your first sentence or your topic sentence relates to the question. So if you talked about how to clean a penguin or penguins' problems, that doesn't relate to our question on the penguin paper because our question was, how do people solve overwhelming problems? So when we wrote this, we made sure it related to the question so we can simply transfer it down on our paper. So I'm going to write, there are several ways the authors show what it was like to live through the Peshtago fire. Next thing I need to do is if I look through the rubric, I'm trying to figure out what would a logical progression of ideas be. So looking at this, I'm trying to figure out what circle should I work on first. And after looking at the circles, looks like I did put them in logical order already, so we're just going to start with characteristics and work our way from there. Another commonly missed area on the penguin paragraph was a lot of people took just this one word and they put it in their paper. We can't do that because that is not a complete sentence. So I need to figure out what words do I need to use to make characteristics a complete sentence. So I'm going to put the author talks about several characteristics of the fire. Now that's a complete sentence other than a few typos we need to fix here. Okay, now we can move on to our first detail in our characteristic sentence. We're going to put, and again we need to make these sentences, the sky began orange. Let's go with began to appear orange at the beginning of the fire and transform into blood red when the fire, or as a fire, intensified. The fire, the author, let's go with the author explains how the fire began as several small fires and they combined into a giant fire. Alright, now we're ready to move on to our next circle, and again I'm looking for logical progression, and it really does make sense just to move on to survival because that'd be the next step of the fire. So I'm going to put there are several methods people use to survive the fire. Many people escaped to plowed fields. John Kramer, we're going to put the main character in the story passage. Let's go with passage. And let's go back to this John Kramer and add his wife in there because we forgot about her. John Kramer and his wife, the main characters in the passage, were able to find a well to go in, which allowed them to survive the fire. Now the last thing we're going to do, of course, is talk about our last circle, and I'm going to put the fire caused much damage to Kostego. The article tells about how the fire destroyed 16 towns, leaving them all in ashes. Okay, that's not really in my my box there, but I kind of remember that, and I want to add to this sentence to make it a little better, so I put that in there. I'm also going to put, sadly, this is a great transition word, that's why I'm putting it in there. Sadly, the fire killed between 1,600 people to 2,500 people. Now as we finish this up, I saw a lot of people that really struggled with paraphrasing. Remember that if you use an author's exact words, you have to put it in quotes. And it's also not enough just to change a few words, like every other word. That's still plagiarizing. So one advantage of taking just brief notes in these boxes here is it forces us to paraphrase, because unless you have a really good memory, you're not going to remember the author's exact words, and it forces you to come up with your own sentences. Alright, so moving on. The last sentence is our closing sentence. Remember, that should relate to our topic sentence, but it should be stated just a little differently. And we did a good job doing it already here, so I'm just going to copy what we have. So it says, a passage uses several details to depict the Peshtigo fire as a traumatic experience. Alright, now the last thing we need to do, and this is something else a lot of people forgot to do when they're writing about the penguin paragraph, is we need to cite our source. Remember, in MLA, all we need to do is at the end of the last sentence that we have, we're going to tell the author's last name. So that's why I'm going back to my article here. So I'm looking for the author's last name. It's Lauren Tarshis. So my author's last name is just Tarshis. So I'm going to write Tarshis. And then I need the page numbers that I use. That's why I underlined it, because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget what pages I used. So we didn't use page 6. Looks like we started on page 7 and we went to page 8. So that's where I'm going to put 7 dash, and I just paged up 7 to 8. That would be a well-written paragraph. This paragraph here would get an A on the expository paragraph test. So remember, if you plan to retake this expository paragraph assessment, you need to bring your original paper, and you also need to come up with suggestions or ideas of what you would change and why. So you need to look at the comments that I made, and also look at the rubric, and also, of course, think about how to write an effective expository paragraph according to this YouTube video, and come up with suggestions of what you would change in your paper and why.